listen, I have to say this, Menya.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to finally meet you.
The feeling is mutual.
I saw you on a documentary. I think you were on that, was it the Black Man one?
Black Experience in Japan.
And you did a backflip, and I said, this cat's trying to be a genius now. But it looked good.
Funny. Thank you.
Looked good. You have the right build for it, but did you ever do gymnastics?
No, not exactly. When I was in college, we had a club, gymnastics club, and it was essentially for college students who wanted to get into gymnastics who maybe didn't do it when they were younger. Okay. And then there were a few people who had done gymnastics but who weren't obviously taking it to any kind of professional, serious level. So I had always wanted to learn to do backflips. I was able to do front flips, and I had done cartwheels, and I mean, poorly, handsprings, poorly, obviously. This is like me
been trained,
when I was young, exactly, when I was young in my yard with my friends. So anyways, I joined this club, and in the first 2 sessions I went, I accomplished the backflip, if you will. That's so right. First time was just into a pit, and then I think one time was assisted, and then my second session, the guy was like, you can do this, just go ahead and try it. And, backflips they're scary when you haven't done it. They're not actually that hard to do, but they're terrifying. So I went for it and I did it. And then from that day, it's been the thing that... In
teaching gymnastics, I always tell people this. Yeah. The back handspring is mentally easy, but physically difficult.
Correct.
And the back flip is physically easy, but mentally difficult.
I totally agree. I think I was told the same
The
thing.
reason why is because when you're doing the back handspring, you think you're going to be able to save yourself with your hands.
Correct.
Back flip, you're going up in the air and you have to clear it and land back on your feet.
There's no saving.
So mentally, it seems harder.
Yes.
But it isn't.
Yes.
It's
it was exactly
much easier than the mechanism is much easier than back handspring.
So I still can't effectively do a cartwheel into back handspring.
It isn't.
I can't effectively do it.
It's a round off.
Round off, correct. Sorry, round off. I still cannot effectively round up into a back handspring.
You haven't been taught properly. If you
exactly. I didn't go long enough to really do it. I think I went to maybe 4 sessions. I wanted to learn the backflip. Right. So I went for those 2 sessions, did a third session where we just fooled around. Right. Tried doing the run off the wall backflip thing.
That's right. My son's
and that was it. That was my 3 sessions, and I was done. But I accomplished what I wanted in that time, which is good.
All right. Wow. Gymnastics talk at the beginning always gets me fired up. Listen, where were you born, Menya?
I was born in Medfield, Massachusetts.
Okay, but you told me something interesting. Your parents are originally from?
Kenya, mom and dad.
Kenya.
Born and raised in Kenya.
Because I saw the wedding you had.
Yeah.
Man,
ceremony.
That's the kind of stuff you see in Coming to America with Eddie Murphy.
Correct.
And I mean, this was real.
This was in Natick, Massachusetts.
And you just, that wasn't where?
This was in Massachusetts, believe it or not.
That was in Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
Because all the women were dressed up.
Exactly.
In the ceremony.
So there's a huge Kenyan diaspora on the East Coast. And my father is kind of one of the original, it's a stretch, but kind of one of the original Kenyans to come and then start bringing over other Kenyans. And so I think went to UMass Lowell. Again, he got an engineering degree. He was an electrical engineer for years and years. And kind of while he was working, sending money back home, he was bringing over cousins and friends and relatives and all that. So now, there are thousands. There may very well be tens of thousands, but there are definitely thousands and thousands of Kenyans on the East Coast. And so that video you saw, that kind of Coming to America ceremony, was actually a celebration of Jasmine's birth. So in Kenyan culture, which I didn't even know, in Kenyan culture, when a woman becomes a grandmother, they celebrate her becoming a grandmother, and so it's called I believe it's called an Itega.
So it's for your mother.
It was actually for my mother, and for Risa, but mainly for my mother, believe it or not. So it was a celebration for her. So then, as you could see, all the women came out, dressed the way they normally would. It was beautiful. That festival is actually typically for women only.
I was going to say, because you're the only male there.
Yeah, I had never been to that kind of thing. I didn't even know it existed. I didn't know that was a thing until Jasmine. And then because I was visiting, they figured we have to bring Menya in because, he's visiting. So I was able to attend my first, which was for Jasmine, and it blew me away. You might have been blown away watching the video.
I said, look at my man's coming home. He's at home.
It was native. I know. Everyone thought that. Yeah, everyone thought we were in Kenya. When did you go to Kenya? I was like, no, this is 10 minutes from where we live.
Studio prop.
Yeah, 10 minutes from where we live in Natick. So, my family, they are one thing about African culture. There's joy in everything, and I think I feel so blessed to have been raised the way we were. Very much raised.
Well, that's what I want to get into.
I'm probably jumping the gun.
What were you like when you were a little kid?
Ooh, what was I like?
And you have siblings too, right?
I've got an older brother.
How many years difference?
3.
Are you guys close?
Yeah, I love my brother's. I love him with my heart.
Where is he?
He lives in Chicago.
Okay, does he have
Yeah.
family?
He does not. He's got a girlfriend now, no children, never been married. He's one of those guys who may not want to have kids.
So he's 38.
38, exactly.
38, right.
Actually, this year,
He'll turn 39.
he's 39. He's 3.5 years older. I'll turn 36
Okay.
this year. He'll turn 30. He'll turn 40 at the very end of this
Okay.
year, and I'll turn 36.
Yeah.
So he's 3.5 older.
So you're saying he's one of those type of guys that may not ever...
He may not ever have kids. It's just, even when we were young, he just never wanted to have kids. He's just one
Okay,
of those guys.
that's
He's
fine.
wanted to be married. He's wanted to find a partner
Yeah.
and that whole thing. But whenever we've talked about kids, he's always thought, I don't know if I need that.
I almost didn't do it.
And
At my age,
actually, me too. No,
the
me
reason,
too.
The reason why I thought about it,
Yeah.
I did want to have kids.
Yeah.
But there was a time when I thought, do I want to bring my brown
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
in this environment? I'm thinking about America.
Exactly.
That was
yeah,
the only
yeah,
reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
yeah,
thinking, do I
yeah.
want them to go through the things
Whatever
I had
went
to
through.
navigate?
Yeah.
And why would I do that to somebody?
Yeah.
It's hard enough just living,
Yes.
but adding this extra
Yes,
thing. And just
yes.
imagine, what if it were girls?
Exactly.
And I wanted girls.
Exactly,
Girls
yeah.
and have to deal with
Yeah.
the issue of looking not like the dominant
Correct.
or the
correct,
strongest,
correct,
culture.
correct,
So
correct.
that's, I would say it's culture. I mean, the strongest dominant figures that we look at being white, basically.
Exactly. So I had that same kind of dilemma, but here. And so I've got a video on it. I mean, for reasons that are very different, and actually I'd love to get your input on this, having four
Okay.
sons here.
Right.
What would it be like if, I've got an entire video on this, but if I give birth to children here,
Right.
and they're raised here,
Right.
what does that do to them? And I think this applies to any country, technically. In any given country, especially if you end up raising children who are who are mixed, is probably the easiest way to put it, what happens to them in that given environment?
And
I think in
happens
some
how?
places...
What do you mean happen in what way?
What I mean by that is, just like you were saying, if you gave birth to your children in America,
Mhm.
you'd have to, which you probably have, I'm sure you've had, but you'll have to have conversations with your kids that we as black men simply have to have with our children, or even just black
If you're gonna-
people.
if
You
you're
just
gonna-
have to.
You should.
Probably anywhere in the world, it's kind of just a conversation you need to have. Just be aware,
Right.
whatever that conversation is, there
Right.
is a conversation.
Did you have
at
that
some
with your
point.
parents?
I did have that with my parents.
You did?
But honestly,
how old were you when that happened?
But it's different because my parents, I had it with them, but it was very different. It was much more subtle because, meaning my parents came from Kenya, so they didn't inherit in the same kind of almost like trauma or pain that I feel like black Americans who have been there for generations and generations all inherit from grandma, grandpa, great-ma, grandpa, and rightfully so, but we didn't inherit that. So growing up, it was different. My parents moved to America and they just adapted as best they could to this new environment, given the context of being black people in America. So when we were raised, I was raised in a very white environment, but it wasn't, they didn't have to sit down and have the conversation with me in the way that I imagine maybe you had a conversation with your mother or father, or somebody else may have.
Never did. I missed that
You
conversation.
never had it? Yeah.
No, I never had it, but I got mad at my father when I got in
Yeah.
the service.
Yeah. For not having it with you.
Well, why didn't you tell me? Wait.
Ah, interesting.
I
Yeah.
was one of 5 black guys in my squadron.
Yeah.
There's 60 people there.
Yeah.
The other 4 were all from the South.
Yeah.
Didn't want to deal with me.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe it's because of my accent.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
Martinez was my buddy.
Yeah.
He was from California too.
Yep.
We're watching the video
Interesting. Yeah.
on the history of the military.
Yeah.
Found out that my father was a tech sergeant, and
Yeah.
I always thought his squadron was, I don't know what I thought,
Yeah.
but I thought he was in control. I didn't know it was a black squadron
Yeah.
controlled by white guys.
Oh, interesting.
And I asked these black guys when we came out the filming, because
Yeah.
my lip was still on the floor.
Yeah.
Did you guys know that? So where you been?
Yeah.
In, you know?
Yeah.
And I went. So when I got home on
Yeah.
leave, I said, Dad,
Yeah.
were your superiors all white?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah.
Yeah.
I said, well, why didn't you ever tell me? He said, is that the way it is now?
Yeah.
I said, well, not quite. He
Yeah.
said, those are my skeletons.
Yeah. Interesting.
They're not yours.
Interesting.
This is not the way it is now.
Interesting.
And I'm thinking,
Very
but I look like a
interesting.
fool.
Yeah.
Everybody seemed to know this
Very
but me.
interesting. Yeah.
So he didn't put me through that.
But he deliberately didn't. That's what I find interesting. It wasn't.
But I was still going through my own trauma.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I was
Okay.
7 years old when
Yeah.
I had to decide
Yeah.
I really wanted to be me.
Yeah.
Because I saw Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you read the book I just wrote.
Okay.
Yeah,
This
I'm gonna
story's
let
in
you-
there.
It's a 30-minute read. Not
Yeah.
even 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's 14 pages,
Yeah.
6 chapters,
Yeah.
and you'll see part of that in there.
Yeah.
But that's the trauma you talked about.
Yeah, exactly. So that, like I said, I didn't inherit that. So
Right.
I saw it all around me. Obviously I knew it was real, and I felt some aspects of it, just being black in America.
Right.
But it was different. And I think, honestly, I think anyone, in fact, I just sat down with a guy you may know. I won't mention his name. He may not want to be included, so I won't mention his name, but I just sat down. He must be, I'm guessing, he must be in his 50s, maybe even early 60s. I want to say he's probably in his 50s, maybe early 60s. He's been in Japan a long time. He's also from Boston. We met in Daikanyama and had coffee. We talked about everything. And one of the things we got into, he's from Trinidad originally, but he was raised in Boston. So very similar things. So we related on the dynamic of being Black Americans, but in his case, he was born in Trinidad. I was born in Mass, but kind of being a little bit maybe different than the Black Americans around us because we just didn't have the same inheritance. Is probably the way to put it, or that part of inheritance. And so as that relates to what I was saying about Jasmine, when I thought about having a child here and raising my child here, it's very different. In Japan, I'm not worried about the police bothering me. I'm not worried about...
You're not worried about any physical harm.
There's no physical harm. That's entirely unrelated. But the kind of potential emotional... I'm going to say emotional damage, which will make my son laugh because it's a trending term right now, but that kind of potential emotional damage to being different in this country is something that I didn't really know how to process or to feel about, especially because of it. You mentioned the channel yourself. The Black Experience Japan has countless interviews with people who were raised in this country, whose maybe mother was Black or father was Black, and either Japanese, Chinese, Korean, whatever, and then raised here. And then what was that like for you, going through the school system, trying to find a job, everyday life, etc. And some of the stories, I think everyone has more or less turned out okay, obviously, but people went through a lot, and some people went through a lot more than others, and some people, I think people who are maybe a little bit older than me who have kids often say now things are quite different than they used to be. So maybe, I'm almost the same age as your eldest son. Maybe 30 years ago, when he was, 30 years when he's 5, 6 years old, his experience will be different than Jasmine's because it's a 30-year gap, of course. And inevitably, Japan has progressed in that time. So I think the older Jasmine gets and the more I see her experiences, things actually seem quite good. I'm pleasantly surprised by how good her experience has been, considering my reservations around, just like you said, having a child, but for me, here. That's right. So it's been good. So all around, so far so good. I still don't know what's going to happen with the school systems when she gets older, but at least I can feel at peace now knowing everything's good. Right. She's got an older brother and older sister, and they take great care of her, and overall it's been really good. So
in lieu of me trying to give you all of my anecdotes and thoughts about it, which I could do very easily.
Yeah. I'd love to hear you. I'm
going to do this off this podcast. Sure. Because it's going to be it's going to be quite lengthy.
Sure.
And it's
got time. No, I'd love to hear.
And it's just a viewpoint.
Yeah.
It's just a viewpoint. That's all we can offer.
Yeah.
And then some of it may resonate with you, some of it may not.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the only one that's going to know how it affected her is her.
Correct.
Jasmine's the one that's going to have to interpret it.
Exactly.
She's going to do it.
And then the only way I'll know is by observation, and then ideally if she tells me.
And you still won't know.
I still won't know. Yeah. Only if she tells me, basically. Yeah, that's the only way. Yeah.
So tell me this. So growing up, what type of child were you? Were you more academic or were you more physical?
Oh, interesting. I was definitely a physical kid, but I was surrounded by academic kids. And the reason is, you mentioned my older brother. My older brother was also quite physical, but in his case, he chose a very different friend group. So his friend group was more along the lines of the physical friend group, the fun seekers, if you will. Because of seeing kind of his path, my friend group ended up being a very different kind of friend group. And this was actually, I think, by choice or by design, because my father's one of those fathers who always says, you're going to wind up like the people you spend your time with, basically.
He used to tell you this?
From 5 years old. So
and your father and mother doing okay?
Yeah, they're great. They were just here in Japan. Like I said, about 2 weeks ago. Right. They had an amazing time. They actually spent one night here with us in the house. We hosted them. We had got them a place about a minute from where we are. So every morning at 8 a.m. they were at the door, play with the kids, and it was wonderful. We were originally going to meet in Bali to do a kind of a family trip with the ocean and all that, and we ended up deciding to just come here and do cherry blossom viewing here because they'd never seen that. This is only their second time in Japan, and they had a phenomenal time.
What about your brother? Has he been here?
My brother came twice. Once 2012 with my parents, and the first time was actually, I want to say, way back, 2004, maybe 2003. I graduated in 2005. It was even before that. Maybe 2001 or 2000. When he graduated from high school, he came with his best friend. And actually, that was a huge inspiration for me.
When your brother graduated from high school, He did what? He came before you came?
Before I came, but he didn't live here. He came here for 2 weeks. So in
For
fact,
what?
part of just to travel, to visit Japan.
Okay.
So his kind of high school graduation gift was a trip with his best friend here to Japan. And they spent a week here, maybe a week and a half, and they just went to Akihabara, played video games,
I guess
did
so.
that
Maybe
whole
that
thing.
would, okay.
Yeah, so, and part of the reason I came originally was actually because I wanted to do that too, but in my case, I ended up coming here to work. So this is,
We're gonna
I'm
get into that.
deviating, I'm deviating from the
That's
childhood.
okay.
So childhood basically more physical,
Right.
but again, I was surrounded by kids who were very academic.
Right.
And so fortunately, the physical side stayed with me. Even my work now is quite physical in many regards, but I've always also really enjoyed the kind of academic side. And I think things like piano and just
Because you said
pleasure
you've been
reading
playing the
have
piano
grounded me
since
I was 8.
Now, what started that?
I think the original was honestly just not understanding how an individual could sit at whatever that thing is and do whatever this is and make it sound good. And it just blew me away. I just
Neither
couldn't-
of your parents played
not
instruments?
at all. No one in my family plays music.
You're the
that I'm
only
even
musical
aware of.
person. You're the-
Literally that I'm even aware of. Yes.
So, but for some reason, at 8 years old, you're looking at this, or
And
7,
I just at 7,
and you
whatever
said,
it was, and it just blew me away.
You
And I
said,
don't
"I gotta
know
learn
where
how to
it
do
comes
that."
from. My dad doesn't sing. My mom doesn't sing. They've never touched an instrument in their life, as far as I can tell. I don't have any uncles, cousins,
Because I
whatever.
just heard it in your view. It's really nice.
Oh, I love it. I just couldn't believe it was possible. It just shocked. I would, and so obviously, start. It's
Right,
horrible.
chopsticks or
chopsticks
whatever,
or
right.
little finger, whatever. And then eventually, they got me lessons because I was interested, and I just kept playing. Kept
And all of a
doing
sudden, the
it,
girls
kept doing
start.
it. Exactly. Then you get older, and you're like, oh, this is a
so
thing.
Wait,
Okay.
So whatever. So you're junior high, junior high.
Yeah.
And
So
you're the only
junior high.
pianist?
Well,
Were you
junior high, I
invited?
started playing in school.
Okay,
That's when I
right.
started kind of transitioning to playing
Right.
with people.
Right.
And then that's really when the attention factor probably became a factor, and having my personality type, that was a way to shine, obviously. So that definitely played a part in my interest in doing it.
Right.
But especially now, if I skip forward to now, it's just joy. And you play sax,
Right,
you can relate. It's
Well,
just
I wish I could. I want to relate someday. I know I have, because of my age.
It's pure joy.
I do
Yeah.
love hearing it, and I get tears in my eyes.
yeah, same.
When I was,
the same.
when I
Oh,
was about to
I do.
buy it,
Yeah,
I went to a music store
yeah. I'm
5 years
exactly-
ago,
Yeah.
and I blew it. And the guy's a good salesman, but didn't take much from me.
Yeah.
And he said, "What?
Yeah.
You could blow?
Yeah.
Most people can't
Yeah,
blow." And
yeah.
I went, "What?"
Yeah.
And I got in the car to drive away
Yeah.
and started crying because I loved the sound so much. Went
Yeah.
back and bought it.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Went
It's
back and
beautiful.
bought it.
Yeah.
Stayed with that for a little while,
Yeah.
and now I'm where I'm at now. And if
Yeah.
you, I can read music.
Yeah.
I can play, and I
Yeah.
am going to become good with
Yeah.
1 or 2 or maybe several songs.
And that's it. And it's joy. At
But
the
I'm
end,
gonna
you're
get
going to realize at the end of the day,
Yes, it makes you
you're not
feel good.
playing to make money and become a superstar.
No,
You're
that's not-
playing
no.
because it brings you joy.
Right.
And I think the older I've gotten, the more I've appreciated that. And so now when I play, and I play very often, it's just pure joy. And yeah, and so that started at 8 anyways. And again, the physical side was definitely a thing, but I had this music element. And then again, I was surrounded by friends who were very into academics. So it was a good balance, I think. I
Okay.
didn't get locked in the athletic thing or just
Okay.
do the
Right. But what did you do
academic
for
thing.
athletics? What was your
So
favorite
athletics, I was
sports?
doing basically my big ones were track and field and soccer.
What'd you
Those
do in
two.
track and field?
Track and field, 400, 800, triple jump, and long jump, and then the 4x4. So yeah, triple jump, long jump, little high jump, but I wasn't very good at it. So triple jump.
But you were kicking the butt. You were kicking. Wait, your school was predominantly white, right?
Predominantly white. I mean, I set
Okay,
the school
so you were
record in
killing them.
decathlon.
You were killing them.
I did pretty good. For that, but
If
for
it's
the
only- if you're only
environment.
talking to-
Exactly.
right,
No, for
but-
the environment. It's funny because
Right.
in my school, yes, and even in my little district area,
Right, okay.
yes.
But when
What
you
was
got
very
outside the-
interesting was very interesting when I got to maybe junior year of high school. I started to pay attention to college, and then I started realizing I have done well, all things considered. But then I look outside of Massachusetts. I look at places like Texas, California, and I'm like, oh
These
my
cats are
gosh, these
nuts.
guys are
There's no
unbelievable.
joke.
So yeah, I'm running 50 point something 400. I'm thinking this is great. Like this is
Wait,
this
what's
top
where
level
you
of my
were
area.
at? Where you at, yeah.
They're kids, 15 years old, 2 years younger than me at the time, running 45, 46. I'm like, what are you doing? Like it was. So it was at that point I realized my dreams of becoming an Olympic athlete are probably not.
They're not as realistic as you
And
might
that
have
was
thought.
thankfully that was when I was able to pivot more towards even academics at that time. Like probably junior year I really shifted gears. So it's okay. That is as much as I love this, it's not going to happen. So let me really focus on the academic side. And I think that's what really
What
helped.
did you like academically?
Academically, I think I've always enjoyed language. That's the wrong way to put it. Not foreign language. I've always enjoyed English. Like I've always enjoyed reading and just language, speaking properly. I think we're probably quite similar. I've always enjoyed definitely, to keep it simple, reading.
What kind of books?
Ooh, then or now?
Then.
When I was young, I really liked sci-fi.
But
And
you
that
said you
comes
still
from-
do. What are you talking about?
Which I still do. No, of course. But I don't read it now. I love it, but I don't read it.
wait.
Well, I've just shifted to
I hear you.
different stuff. I still love it, but I don't
Right.
really read it. When
I
I was
hear you.
young,
That's all
my
you
favorite
did.
book, which I just bought actually for my eldest, Luna, is Ender's Game. Orson Scott
Ender's
Card.
Game, yes.
You know
You
Ender's
saw the
Game.
movie. You saw the movie.
Yeah, I saw the movie, exactly.
Yeah.
Movie,
It
you should
wasn't
read the book.
good. It wasn't
movie,
as good. No,
exactly,
I did read
exactly.
the book.
You read the
Yeah,
book as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't know.
So, yeah, that kind of thing. And I mean, I just loved sci-fi fantasy when I was young. I think now I still really enjoy it, but now the sci-fi fantasy I get is from films. So even this whole like Marvel thing that ties into my love of, you know, fictional characters, all the sci-fi, all the fantasy. Marvel's kind of doing that.
Right,
Marvel and
right.
DC are doing that for me.
But I think you'd be more of like the player one type of guy, or the
I
or
love that
Valerian
stuff.
or Valerian.
Correct,
would be
correct.
more of
Love
your-
that
your
stuff.
type
Yes.
Because Marvel's nice, but
Yeah,
it doesn't have the creativity.
but it clicks
That's,
with your.
that's really real.
Yeah.
That's it. Marvel's what's going to
Correct.
happen.
Yeah, correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
We can
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that.
In some ways, yeah. I think what clicks with this is a tangent, but what clicks with the Marvel DC side is my best friend and I have always been obsessed is the wrong word, but always been very into those characters. The Captain America, Iron Man, growing up, I mean, Wolverine,
Black Panther.
Yeah, no, and actually, my introduction to Black Panther was late. I think I was introduced to Black
Me
Panther
too.
in college.
Yeah.
I discovered Black Panther as a
Right,
character.
right.
It just took a long time to get there. I don't know how.
Right.
So when the films came out, I had some familiarity, but not nearly as much as, again, the bigger names, which are the
Right.
Captain America, Iron Man, whatever.
Right.
So anyway, so because of that, I think the films really resonate with me because it's just that childhood obsession with these characters. So I think film has allowed me to really dive into the fantasy, sci-fi side of things. But now with my reading, it's become much more kind of self-help, developmental stuff, or autobiographies or biographies.
Isn't that a shame that schools don't put that in you from the beginning? That should
It
be your
is.
base.
It is.
That should be your base,
It
not
should
something
be.
you're trying to catch up with.
I agree. I agree.
And through a filter, first of all.
My
through a
book
filter.
in here, Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, right in here. Like just
But
got
you
it.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
I should have read that when I was,
Yeah.
11 or
The
something, like
education.
15.
I've been asked to give a talk at some of the schools, so
Yeah.
when I go there, I'm a little concerned about how they're going to take what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Because
This is an international school, I'm assuming.
yes,
Yeah.
but when I come in hard. The
Yeah.
same thing I did when I was in the chamber. I
Yeah.
come in with stuff that prove that I'm not right.
Yeah.
Show me how doing it your way
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
When the game is set up the way it is.
Yeah.
Right? Now
Yeah.
you can't take any of it with you.
Yeah.
So it must be, obviously, you want to have control over as much as you can, that you enjoy having control over it while you can. That's it. That's
Agree.
that's the game.
Yeah.
And if you have that, then you start looking at it completely different than ownership and
Correct.
The worst thing
Correct.
man's done to each other is saying, "This is mine."
Correct.
On land.
Yeah.
How?
Agreed.
You're not even guaranteed you're going to
Agreed.
wake up tomorrow morning, but
Agreed.
that's yours?
Agreed. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. We could get lost in
We
that
should-
philosophy,
we
but I
could.
agree. No,
We
I
could.
agree. There's a lot.
Yes.
We would end up diving into capitalism and
We could, and
ownership.
everything else, yeah. And the thing is, but you have to
Yeah.
just verbalizing
Yeah.
it and thinking about it is
Yeah.
just that. It's like, it's mental masturbation.
Yes.
It doesn't produce anything.
Yeah.
So you have to come up with the product. You have
Yeah.
to make it materialize.
Yeah.
Which we have the possibility of doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting off into a whole bunch of
No,
stuff.
no, that's okay. That's okay.
No, I
So,
can't.
for Evans, you asked me about childhood,
Yes.
athletic, and then reading. And then,
Yes, right. So anyway, so you're going to go from there, from high school.
Yep.
You had to start deciding what you wanted to do,
Yep.
what your career was going
Yep.
to be.
Yep.
You never went into the service.
Nope, never went to service.
Okay. When did you travel
And
a lot?
again, it wasn't even a consideration. But the thing
never
being,
think about
your
it,
father
right?
was in the service, right?
Right.
So, of course, growing up,
I
to
didn't
some
want to go in
extent-
the service.
No, but to some extent,
Right.
you were familiar with the service as a thing. You must have been. Your
Oh
father
yeah,
was in
no,
the service, right?
yeah, something you don't want to have to do.
Exactly, but it is a thing that exists. For
Right.
me, like it wasn't even on
Talked
the
about,
radar
yeah.
as things that I would conceivably do. Again, that relates to kind of my parents and their whole, their philosophy. It just never. I think it was when I was going to college. I had one friend who went to West Point.
Mhm.
This guy's name Alex something. Alex, no, not Herbert. Alex something. His name's Alex. Whatever. He ended up going to West Point. It was around that time, junior or senior year. When, maybe he mentioned. I was like, oh, people do this. They go to West Point or they join the military and do that. But it was never on my radar.
And mine was more of an avoidance because we knew
Yeah.
Vietnam had started in the 60s when I was in junior high school.
Yeah.
no one wanted,
No
to,
one
go.
wanted to go.
That's
Yeah.
why they had college deferments, which my brother, who's 5 years older, took advantage of. My first year in college, I get a draft notice.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where you're constricted. You don't
Yeah.
have a choice.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why there's so many people that were Americans at one time are now Canadians.
Interesting.
They fled. They fled.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't.
And I thought about
that.
it.
Yeah.
But I decided instead of being drafted into the Army,
Yeah.
I'm going to enlist.
Yeah.
So when I went up to the recruiting office and told them I want to enlist, they said, get in line.
Yeah.
You have to test to get into the Air Force.
Oh,
So of the 25 people that day that tried to get in, only 2 of us did.
Yeah. Interesting.
When you got into high school, you
Yeah.
decided you wanted to, what were you thinking about doing?
So from the age of probably 13, the plan was become a lawyer, practice law. This comes from, keep this relatively short, this comes from my brother's best friend's father, who is also quite close with my father. So my father's friend, basically, ran a practice in our town. He's a CPA, but he also did all kinds of tax work for people in the city. And I always thought, I want to live a life like this. And I think at the age, probably 13, 14, I kind of saw the life they lived, and I thought, oh, that's the kind of life I want to live. I want to buy a house, have my own practice, be able to travel several times a year, et cetera, work for myself. So going, start high school, get to junior, senior year, it was still the plan, but I really wanted to explore doing something a little bit different before diving into law school. Because again, you graduate, you take your LSATs, and then you jump into 3 more years of school. And towards my junior year, maybe midway through, I realized, I want to do something a little bit different. Like I want to have an experience of living somewhere that's not here and just see what that's like. And that's what led me to coming to Japan, to take a little break before returning to take my LSATs and go to law school. Little break has turned into 13 years, and the house we're in now.
You never went back?
Never went back.
Well, okay, so take me through that now. Okay,
Yeah, so basically junior year.
So how old were you?
At the time I'm 17.
17.
This is junior year. And I'm thinking, I know that I want to, this is high school, we're talking about high school. Oh, I'm sorry, you know what I jumped to? Sorry.
You jumped through
Oh,
something.
I
What
jumped
was
to,
it?
I did it wrong. I jumped to college. I'm sorry. Go back. What I did is I went from the high school story and I jumped into the end of the college story. Go back, sorry about that, because I went to school in the States.
Okay.
I'm going to repeat that whole thing. So basically, law was always the plan. 13, 14, I knew I wanted to do that. And then when I was finishing high school, I knew that I wanted to go to college. So basically, that was simple. I'm sorry, I missed up the time
No
frame.
problem.
So I ended up applying early decision, got into the school that I really wanted to get into. It was actually the same school that my best friend had gotten into a year before. He's a year older than me. So I ended up going to that school, doing my first 2.5 years there, kind of everything on track. And then maybe junior year of college, I'm 20 years old, I decided that I want to do something different before going to another 3 years of school. There's just like so much school. I wanted to do something different, travel.
But your grades were good.
Grades are good. Everything was fine. I was essentially on track to graduate, take the LSATs, and go to school. So I apply, I want to say maybe early senior year of college to come teach here in Japan.
What program?
Interac. I
Interac.
missed the JET deadline, whatever that deadline is. So I missed JET.
There's
My
another
friends,
one
I had 2
called-
friends who applied. They were like, "Oh, did you apply?" I forgot. I didn't make it. So I did Interac. Got that pretty early. I think I found out by November. So they're like, "Great, you can come do it." Great. So thought I'll go here for 7 months to a year, do this whole Japan thing. Because as I mentioned, my brother went when he graduated from high school. So I'd always wanted to go, but I'd never gone.
And you hadn't been at all.
I had never been, so I thought maybe this is my way of doing that whole Japan thing. Came, and then this story could be very long, but to give you the short story, came, taught for about 6 months in Nagoya, visited Tokyo, and then that's just what I knew. I have to spend some time here.
You
And
just
that
went
was
to the
it.
future.
I
You
just
stepped
went.
into the future.
It was. I got off the train in Shinjuku, and I
you
just.
what in the...
What is going on?
It's like being on another planet,
It was
man.
unbelievable. It changed, and so that. Had I not visited Tokyo,
You
I would have gone.
gone
I
home.
swear to
Gone
God,
back
I
home.
would have gone back. I
Yeah, why
swear
wouldn't
to
you?
you.
There's no-
But once I visited, I knew whatever this is, I have to have a little more of this, and then that was it.
There you go. And you've
Yeah.
been here since.
Been here since 13 years. I'm in my 13th year. Yeah,
Do you have any plans on going back?
absolutely.
You
So
do?
we just again, the long story could be long, but my wife and I, she was raised in Pasadena. She's Japanese. She was born in Japan, but lived about 16 years in California, Pasadena area. And then she came back to Japan, and she's been here ever since. So she's probably been here like 15 years. I've been here 13. And from the moment we met, we knew, both of us, that we want to move back to the U.S. And ideally, we'd love to live in California at some point. So even now, the plan is still to go back. What we don't know is exact time frame. What adds to that, and this will get more complex, but we just built a gym, as I mentioned earlier, down the road in Naka Meguro. power spot. And the good news is the gym's going very well. And the plan always was, when we build this thing, let's build it so we're not, directly involved in the operations of it, so we can at some point in the near future step back and just have it do what it does. And so far that's going, believe it or not, exactly as planned, with unbelievable ups and downs. But we're at that point, and it's great, and so it's looking really good. And so realistically, time frame, 3-4 years from now, if possible, we'd love to make that shift to the US.
What would you do in the States?
That's the part that gets complex, because we don't know exactly. My work is all online. I work as a coach, and that work I can do technically anywhere. But her work now primarily is Japan-based. So even if we moved to the US, we would be moving there to live there, mainly, not necessarily because work requires us to be there, which has its own form of complexities. But obviously, as you can imagine, through what we've learned with COVID and how the world's changed, you can definitely do that. You can kind of live anywhere and make things work. But we've got realities. We've got a family we need to take care of, and we need to be able to provide for them well enough so that makes sense. Right. And so a big part of building this facility is to kind of, create the machine that makes at least part of that possible. Mm-hmm. And so far so good, fingers crossed. It's kind of a matter of, we need to wrap our heads around more specifically how we make that move, where we could possibly make that move. And we've done that. We took a trip there last year in September. We visited a friend in Redondo Beach, beautiful place there. He runs a gym in that area. We kind of had a chance to really see that whole area, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, go all the way down. And she's from that area, so she's familiar with what's going on. But for me, that was my first time in that area, just seeing a different part of California. I've been to LA maybe 3-4 times, but that's more, I've seen Hollywood and different part of LA. So it was nice seeing California. We didn't make it down to San Diego. We didn't make it up to San Francisco, but I got to see kind of more of what California's like. And then I've traveled quite a bit in the U.S. I've seen a bit of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, all of the East Coast. And so, there are a lot of places where I feel like we can make life possible. And I don't know, there's just something we love about the U.S. It's hard to describe. Yeah, it's hard. I think you have one of two people in Japan, and you know this. You have people who come here who will never go back. Yeah. And then you have people who come here who will absolutely go back, or at least want to. And for whatever reason, we're in that category, and I don't exactly know why.
I'll share my analogy that I came up with in my 60s, finally, because I couldn't understand my feelings about the U.S.
Yeah.
The analogy I use is, imagine being raised by abusive parents.
Yeah.
You love them with all your heart.
Yes.
You protect them against any foes.
Yes.
You'd give your life to do so.
Yeah.
But once you grow and they allow you, and because of them, you've been allowed to travel around the world.
Yep.
And then you've seen how other parents treat their kids.
Yeah.
So when you come back to your parents, you tell them you love them.
Yeah.
But Mom and Dad, I can't live with you.
Yeah. I love you, but I can't live with you.
I can't live with you because you traumatized me so much.
Yeah.
As much as you loved me, you traumatized me.
Yeah.
But you continue to.
Yeah.
I still see you trying to traumatize me. Every time I look on the media we control.
Yeah.
And it's only me that I see you doing it to.
Yeah.
And we have everyone from all over the world from there.
Why is it just me?
And you use people that look like me to traumatize me even more by pretending like it never happened.
Yeah. Interesting.
They don't have, you said at the beginning.
Yeah.
They never had the trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
But they look just like me, so you make it seem like I'm making this stuff up.
Exactly. So growing up where I grew up, I never had that I remember, any specific traumatic experiences revolving on race. Of course, I was pulled over in my car in my town, and I'm sure there are racist as hell people in my town. I might have been oblivious to it, to the directness of some of the things, but nothing ever overtly happened to me in my environment, despite being raised in an absolutely predominantly white area and going to a college that was very much predominantly white. Again, time changes things.
You grew up in a small town.
Grew up in a small town, very white.
Well, let me tell you, but they knew who you were.
Everyone did. That's
what
I'm
saying. So that's a big.
It's different. No, it's different. Exactly. So I excelled in things, right? So especially in high school, when I was excelling in sports.
They knew who your father. They knew who you were.
Exactly.
They knew who you were. That's
the difference, right? I think that's the difference. And college, same thing. So my point being, because of that experience, the abusive parents you mentioned, I completely understand the analogy, but it's different. For me, it's different.
Of course it is.
It's I've got imperfect parents, but they never hit me. They never really that's my personal experience. You know what I mean?
And you don't see yourself in the people they abuse.
Correct. The same way. Yeah.
That's a different tribe.
That's the thing.
Completely different tribe.
That's the thing.
So you say
exactly that.
It won't happen. I'm Kenyan, my man.
Yeah. No, exactly, or whatever that is. Exactly.
Whatever he is, that's who they're doing it to.
And I think
and
that...
then make sure to make clear that's who they're doing it to, so no one else is fearful.
It's wild. It's wild.
But they start from little kids. From little kids, they start right away.
And so I think that's what makes the move back home possible. Whereas I think for someone like maybe yourself, or even this guy I mentioned that I had coffee with, he has an experience similar to mine, but even so, generationally, he must be 30 years my senior. So his experiences in that time were just different, especially in Boston, which is a very white Irish city anyways. So for him, it's, we can resonate on being a little bit different, but just the 30-year gap created differences inevitably, and probably in the same way it has for you and I. And so for him, it's not a place he wants to return to for whatever those reasons are.
Yeah. Well,
and I can understand it, but I didn't necessarily experience it firsthand. So it just makes me maybe a little bit more receptive to the possibility of that move back home with mom and dad. You know what I mean? That whole thing. Yeah. But the analogy's spot on. I can completely understand.
That's exactly how
it's very interesting.
Well, listen.
Yeah.
Before I end the podcast, Menya, I always like to ask this question.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time, knowing what you know right now.
Yes.
36 years on this planet, 35, soon to be 36. If you could go back in time and see the younger you.
Ooh, yes.
What time would you go back to, and what advice would you give yourself?
That is a fabulous question. I've never been asked in my life. If I could go back to any time to speak to any age version of me, what would I say? Give me a moment with this one. This is a good question. I don't know the words I would use exactly, but I would essentially implore my 13-year-old self to not be afraid to be who he is. Because I think I spent so much of my youth trying to figure, and every kid does, Luna's 13, she's doing it right now, trying to figure out who I am or who I wanted to be, especially environmentally, being the black kid in the white environment. Who am I with these Kenyan parents? Who do I identify as? And I think a lot of the time I spent kind of walking on eggshells trying to be the right person. And I'm sure we all do this, but it took, coming into adulthood, I would say when I found that, I must have been in my maybe early mid-20s when I kind of found, believe it or not, when I really found who that was. Here, of all places, I kind of found that here in Japan. I just came into whatever that space is where I became comfortable with me, really. And the years searching, or again, kind of walking on eggshells, if I could kind of change one thing, it'd probably be that, to just help myself be comfortable with me. But I mean, I think most people might even say, I don't even know that's unique to me. I think most people might feel that way too.
But you.
Yeah, but for me, for sure, that's probably the thing that stands out most.
Menya, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lance. It's been a pleasure.
Same here. I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast. Make sure you press like and subscribe. And never forget, it's all on loan, so continue to reach for the stars because you're too blessed to be stressed.